Good day, friends. I want to start out by mentioning that this episode is sponsored by Autoimmune Resolution. When it comes to your healing, have you already tried all the things outside yourself? Like nutrition, supplements, detox, and more. Maybe you feel like these things have helped you to a point, but then you hit a plateau and you still end up with symptoms like persistent fatigue, anxiety, digestive issues, or even skin issues and more. This is when it becomes even more vital to access your power within. Your symptoms are not signs that you are irreparably broken. They are messages about the specific areas of your life that still need your attention. And when you can learn to speak your body's language, you can break that cycle of fear and take back your life from chronic illness and autoimmune disease. You have the power to create a life that you don't need to heal from. To learn more, visit autoimmuneresolution.com. And if you haven't already done so, make sure to check out episode number 76 with Catherine Hausch, the creator of Autoimmune Resolution. And welcome to our Power is Within. It's a weekly podcast to inspire you to take your power back and realize that you are the healer that you've been looking for all along. We are capable of healing in mind, in body, and in soul. If you do remember, last week's episode challenge was to tap into your inner creative and write a haiku. And we kept the rules really simple. We just focused on the 3 lines and the syllables, being 5 on the first line, 7 on the second line, and 5 on the last line. No specific topics. I got a few in my DMs and on the comments, and they were really fun. And I love those of you who took the time to just play with this and give it a try. Thank you so much for sharing. I love getting shares so much. And speaking of sharing, I did promise you guys that I would share 1 or 2 with you today. I did post a bunch throughout the week on Instagram, but I know not everyone has Instagram, so here we go. Just kidding. I listen to rain, one of my favorite sounds, drifting into sleep. Number 2, writing a haiku. It is a fun brain challenge. So many giggles. All right, you guys, it's not too late to share what you came up with. So shoot me a DM or an email me. Let me know what you came up with. I'd love to hear. I love hearing from you guys. I actually really, I think I've mentioned this before. I've been deciding on whether or not to continue doing challenges in the new year. They're really for you. So if you do love them and you are participating in them, let me know. And I would love to keep coming up with silly, fun, creative new ways for us to just create some little habits and action steps that are supportive for our overall well-being. I would love to figure out ways also to increase the interaction that I get to have with all of you who are out there listening. Something I've considered doing is giving a private Facebook group a try where you can join and we can have a safe space to share how our challenges went for us or ask questions, or we can make suggestions, whether that's for future topics or future guests, or you can even submit specific questions that you have for specific guests that will be on the show in the future. So if this is something that you would like to join me in, there will be a link in the show notes. So please click it today and join me. As for now, while we are still doing the weekly challenges, I'm going to have this week's challenge align with the episode, which you will shortly understand why. And that is to pick a song that is truly medicinal for you and make a commitment to listen to your song every day. 1 time, 10 times, whatever feels right for you. Just sing along. You can dance if you want, or you can even just lay there, close your eyes, and let the medicine soak in. As always, if you do have a favorite song and want to share it, I would love to hear it because who knows, maybe it will be medicine for me too. So once again, send a message Let me know what your song is, or take a video of yourself listening to the song or dancing to the song and post it on your favorite social media platform. So, our guest today is here to actually share his story. Love the testimonials and the recovery stories. Um, Matthew Wade is our guest. He is a musician, an artist, a writer, a husband, a father, and so much more. Matthew, early on in his life, experienced the onset of a weightlifting injury in his early 20s, and what should have healed in a reasonable time frame so that he could go back to living his life as normal ended up lingering for years, even getting worse, to the point that it became very consuming for him and reduced his quality of life drastically, even impacting his mental state, as so many of us have experienced, right? However, at one point, several years into this experience, Matthew was introduced to a spiritual practice from his brother that would forever change his life and his pain. And he shares that story with us today. Matthew is a huge believer in things happening for a reason and always being in right timing. And he is now a musician with several albums and some really great tunes. So do make sure that you check out the links in the show notes for his music. Maybe even check out his music live event on Facebook every Sunday. You'll get details in this episode because you never know. Maybe one of his songs will be your future medicine. And as he says, they will leave you more inspired than before you found them. With that said, let's get into his story. Matt, thank you so much for being here with me today to share your story.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I love to try to just see what's out there and find people who've had really unique experiences healing from whatever it is they're healing from, whether that's chronic pain or illness or maybe something in the mental or emotional department. But there's so many neat stories of people who are just really taking healing in their own hands and finding their own way to approach healing. And your story, when I first came across it, really stood out to me. So this will be fun for sure.
Awesome.
So I think what I'd love to do is just kind of start at the beginning. So going back to when you were, I think you said 21 years old. From my understanding, you experienced what seems like a rather major youth sport injury, and this turned into this lasting chronic pain. Could you start there and just share with us about that?
Sure. Yep. I was 21. I was traveling in Australia at the time. Growing up, I was very athletic, played a lot of sports. The specific injury happened to me in the gym. I was working out with a buddy of mine. Friend was a lot bigger than I was. I was sort of keeping up, or trying to rather. And but I was always still sort of somewhat aware of my limits, I guess, but maybe not enough at that point because I was doing some shoulder shrugs in the gym, and I felt something sort of pop in my neck, and it was actually interesting because that I had this severe pain for like about a week, and then it went away, and I ended up doing the same thing at a later point. Maybe it's like a month later, and after that, I was hoping that it would get better, but it never did. But it was just sort of, I guess, the path that my life was meant to take. And so, when I came back to the U.S. not long after that, I'm a Boston guy, grew up in Massachusetts. And, basically I had this injury, and, I started seeing various doctors to try and figure out what it was. And I tried several things, and nothing really seemed to be working for me. I tried first chiropractor, and I tried a sports therapist, and I tried acupuncture and massage therapy. And I mean, you name it, I tried it. And it felt like over time, not only was the injury not getting better, the injury was getting worse. And the clock was ticking. This was now already, after trying all these different uh, methods of healing. Um, and it was around that point, a few years in, where um, I ended up speaking with, I believe at that point it was, like a neck back specialist doctor that, they specialize in these surgeries. And they're like, well, at this point, you can either have surgery or not. And that was sort of my options after exhausting, all these other, call them modalities or types of healing. And, there was no roadmap for my situation, and just sort of, I felt like I was still young enough to recover. I heard a couple horror stories about people that had surgery, because there's no guarantee that the surgery is going to help heal what your problem was. So anyway, about I can't recall. I think it was about 4 or 5 years after the initial injury, and I'm sort of left with this ultimatum: have surgery or not. That's when, um, I was sort of at the bottom of the barrel, I would say, for I want to say the quality of my life, where I was not in a good place physically, which also um, translated mentally. Anyone that's had chronic pain before, it's hard. You don't feel comfortable in your own skin. You're always sort of in physical pain, which sort of takes um, a lot of mental capacity to deal with. So, really felt like I was at this crossroads. And it was about that time that my brother gave me a book on spirituality, more specifically Kabbalah, to read. And, it wasn't something, I guess, at first I was all that open to, because it sat on the shelf for the next 6 months or so. And then I think one day I finally picked up this book and I started reading, um, and all the things that I was reading really started to resonate with me.
I would ask a few questions just for timeline purposes. When were you 21 and get this injury initially?
Oh man. So I believe that was in 2001.
Oh, that was a long time ago. Okay.
Yes.
So back all the way in 2001. And now, did you ever actually, in all of these attempts to go to all these different doctors, did you ever get an official diagnosis of what was wrong?
I did. I mean, it's also, some of the diagnoses varied, depending which doctor you went to, which
Right.
was a little bit of the problem for me.
Mhm.
Um, the long and the short in the Western medical, I had some herniated discs.
Okay, that's what I thought. So you were obviously feeling like radiating pain in your neck, probably up into your head, down into your shoulders, arms, maybe even back.
Yeah, all of it. Not I mean, it was resonating through my whole body, and that became part of the issue, where it wasn't just centralized pain where those discs are, it was sort of showing up all over the body.
Hmm. And you obviously, briefly touched base on how it impacted your quality of life over the years. Because, yeah, it can be really consuming, especially when we're going from doctor to different type of, another method to this practice, to this modality, and we get our hopes up over and over again, only to get let down. And we're putting so much energy and focus on this idea of healing in the physical realm, and in the meantime, most people most often end up their life becomes almost smaller, essentially, because they can't do the things that they love in the same capacity. Like, my guess is you probably weren't lifting weights and being as active as you were previously used to.
Correct.
Did you get to find relief in any form of exercise at that time, or were you pretty much just like almost afraid of exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I went through varying stages, I would say, but a lot, and even to this day, I mean, I again, varying stages of weightlifting, but more cardio, some core things like that, or using the body weight as opposed to lifting heavy weights again.
Yeah. And so that can, yeah, as we start to not be able to do the things we love, that also takes a toll on us emotionally and mentally. So you had this book on the Kabbalah that you got from your brother. It sat on your shelf 6 months. And then one day you picked it up. Um, just out of curiosity, did you feel like it was just when you were meant to pick it up? I mean, I feel like all the time I throw books down and I leave them sit there. And then there's just comes a day, and for whatever reason, it's in the front of my mind. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to start reading this finally. And when I do, almost always, I'm like, oh, I was totally supposed to read this right now. Like it was like more the right timing.
I think so. I do believe that everything happens for a reason,
Mhm.
and that, you know, timing's everything, as they say. So
Yeah.
it definitely, I think, plays a role, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're a little skeptical, but you're reading this book and some things start to stand out to you or make sense for you. So what next? Like how did this book become a catalyst for you to express healing?
Yeah. So the next sort of step for me was, after I read that book and I started reading some other spiritual books, and, my brother suggested, well, why don't you come in and meet with a teacher? And I really had no desire to do that at the time. And so that offer probably sat on the table for, another 6 months or period of time. And then one day I decided to go meet with the teacher, and it changed my life. He said to me, what if I told you if you took a class that your injury would get 10% better? Would you do it? And that's sort of the long and the short of the discussion. It was, more profound than that. But I said, for sure, 10% increase when you're not feeling good. To me, that felt like a win at the time. And, so I took a class, and I realized, while I'm taking this class, that I think a lot of my overall thinking was shaped by other people, maybe Western society, and just that I was sort of limiting myself in terms of my thinking. And um, over time, I continued to take more classes, and it led me to see an alternative type of doctor, a neuromuscular massage therapist. And I started seeing this guy, and he'd be working, on healing my body as well as my mind. And over time, I started to see improvements. So it was, again, sort of the timing of something, and like one thing leading to the next. And also as a result of, in my opinion, putting effort into, and consciousness, if you will, into these things that I wanted, and areas that I wanted to see improvement.
All areas of your life.
Yeah, I mean, well, in areas that I wanted to see improvement, and also, partially in my understanding, and studying of spirituality, realizing that, sometimes the work that we do that we want to see in one area might not translate into that area, but can translate into another area of our life.
hmm So it sounds like one of the big takeaways that you got through the class and then your continued studies of this specific type of spiritual practice was really a lot of shift in thinking, like noticing how you were thinking before, maybe beliefs you held, thoughts you were constantly entertaining. And it sounds like you had a shift in how you thought or what beliefs you wanted to hold on to.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. And that is always, in my experience, and from most people I talk to, that's one of the biggest things that really helps us shift into that healing and recovery is, changing the way we think, questioning why we believe things we believe, and then in doing stuff like that, we can take different actions and have different behaviors.
Correct.
Yeah. What are some of the principles of the Kabbalah for anybody listening who's not familiar?
Um, Different people might interpret it a little differently, and I'm not a teacher, mind you, but my understanding, my limited understanding of it, basically is, it's improving the desire to receive for the self alone, or rather transforming the desire to receive for the self alone into the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. So basically, overall, your intention behind thing is not just for the self alone, but it's really for everyone to benefit, not just yourself. And it's much deeper than that, and it's that in various facets, but it's really sort of taking in, look at how, how we're giving in our lives, how are we receiving, how do you balance that? I mean, it's really, Kabbalah is one of the oldest technologies, if you will, and it takes in a lot of spiritual principles that, there's, from where I study anyway, like hundreds of teachers that teach all different, facets of it, and that's all they do, and they'll never even sort of touch, how much information there is there. So it's really something that if someone's interested in, I'd suggest the book that I started with was called The Power of Kabbalah, and that really changed my life. And it's really digestible in that it's like sort of, you know, chapters, like 2 or 3 pages per chapter of specific concepts. And it's just really well laid out in sort of layman's terms, and easily digestible. And to me, it was fascinating. And, I found that once I started applying a lot of these principles to my life, I saw major shifts.
Mhm. Let's talk about that because I was literally just going to ask you and say we often can learn, oh, this way of thinking might not be productive, or this way of acting, or maybe those beliefs aren't serving me, and maybe I need to like let these old beliefs go and fill my heart with new ones. Like, the belief I'm not worthy might not serve me. So can I replace it with a belief that I am worthy? And it's one thing to have the knowledge that there's opportunities for shifts to occur, and it's another to actually implement and put it to practice. So what were some ways that really supported you through actually making these shifts in your life rather than just taking an information and reading and intellectualizing it, but actually embodying it?
Yeah, I mean, applying a lot of these things. I mentioned sort of my studies led me finally to an alternative type of doctor that was able to help me, where I had tried all these sort of, let's call them specialized people. I mean, this guy could be considered that too, I guess, in some ways. But I think that, you know, it sort of made me realize that when you're putting energy towards something, um, you want to be conscious of where you're putting your energy, and that will shape your life. And I think up until then, I felt that things were a lot more random, and that um, it all wasn't connected. And so it wasn't until I sort of, I guess, started doing this work and seeing things shift in my life that I started to see results. And like a big one of those, is my love for music, which is, I think, kind of how we found one another. In that I felt that my life's purpose, sort of having gone through this major challenge in my life, what led me to pursue music was the idea that I wanted to help other people that were going through a similar challenge in their life. And I come across all kinds of people, a lot of the times through people that have found my music. It's sort of inspirational alternative rock is I think, a good way to categorize it. Um, and just realized that a lot of people that were turned on to my music had something going on in their lives, whatever that challenge may be, whether it might be cancer, or, maybe a kid that was bullied, or something that had led them to find the music, and they, it resonated with them. And so, in a big picture sense, I sort of realized that my purpose, I think all of this happened to me because it was really my purpose to help others that were going through this same challenge. Um, and I sort of came to the conclusion, from our biggest challenges also come our biggest blessings, and so it was really, now I sort of look at it, even though it was the hardest challenge of my life, and it still challenges me on a daily basis. It's not something that I've completely recovered from or outgrown, or there's still, I still have physical ailments and things, pain, chronic pain, physical pain, but it's so much more manageable, and I'm able to compartmentalize in some ways. And in some ways, I just kind of, in my belief system and thinking too, that, I feel sort of the pain sometimes is also manifested through, I don't know, discomfort, stress, all these things can bring about pain in different ways. And you sort of figure out maybe some of your own um, triggers or things, you can work on those internally. But to me, I feel like with my injury, and everyone might have a different experience. I think that's probably to the heart of what you're doing, is that everyone's experiences are different. But to me, it was really putting a lot of work, conscious effort, and work into healing, um, and following my own path, not necessarily following the path that someone else was thought was the best for me, because in the end it was my life and I had to live with the the consequences and the outcome.
Right. Okay. Just I have like so many questions I could ask, but let's start here. You just said it. You said to not follow, like to follow your own path rather than the path somebody else wanted you to follow. And you mentioned that this shift and this introduction and you like immersing yourself into more of a spiritual practice in life and making these changes and then seeing things shift in your life led you to your ultimate path and purpose of inspiring and helping others through music.
Hmm.
Did you think prior to all this that you were on a trajectory towards a different path? Like did you have other things in mind? Did you ever before all this think you were going to be a musician?
Well, I think I always had a passion for it, and I loved music. Um, and part of my thinking, maybe prior to, is that I never felt like I was good enough. And
Mm,
maybe even to this day, I still am not where I want to be musically. But I think that became part of the understanding, and that all of life is a learning process and a growth process. And I think I was someone that kind of wanted to get to the top of the mountain, so to speak, and go from A to Z, and wasn't wasn't enjoying the ride, so to speak. Or in that in that reference, it would be, wasn't enjoying the climb, just wanting to like accomplish things and be on to the next. And so I think I just started to realize that there's a lot more involved in the process and enjoying the process. And can you can you remind me what the original question was? I feel like I had a larger point.
yes. I was asking if you were on a different trajectory. Like, were
Oh,
you, prior to the injury, actually thinking that you were going to have a different kind of career and moving in a different direction?
yeah, I think that it helps strengthen my beliefs in myself, and that and in my spiritual work and studying, that I needed to figure out what directions um, I wanted to take, and where I felt my life going, and following that inner voice inside that we all have, that sometimes we might not listen to. And so I think it turned that up, and sort of turned down some of the outside noise.
Hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, we have that internal voice that's like that soul guidance. And a lot of times we don't listen to that because there's so much other noise. And that noise could be outside noise and it could be all those other those wounded inner child voices, the no, you're not good enough, no, we can't, that's too scary, no, we're afraid, no, what if we fail, what if we fall,
Yep.
and just learning how to have the courage to step into it and take yourself to that next level despite all those the fears or the worries or the what ifs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And what's I wanted to point out something that's really neat. So, in my experience of having now communicated with so many people who've encountered chronic pain or chronic illness in their life, what happens is I think many people get to a point where they see this as like a gift or a blessing in some capacity because of what it leads us into. And many people actually just want to help others because they're like, if I went through this, it has to be for a bigger purpose than just me, Like, so
Hmm.
a lot of people um, often become coaches and then, or maybe spiritual teachers, and they almost kind of become maybe what really supported them in a sense. Like maybe,
Hmm.
if you were to become start studying the Kabbalah even more in more depth and become like a teacher, a spiritual teacher of the Kabbalah.
Hmm.
So we see that a lot of people who become health coaches, chronic pain coaches, things like that. I think it's really cool how you saw this opportunity in a very unique and different way. Like you weren't like, oh, I need to go be a Kabbalah teacher now. It was more like, hey, this is how I can actually transform my passion and use that to still support and help other people who are going through similar challenges in life. That's really awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I sort of felt like that I had this calling for music. It was something that I was always passionate about, and I felt like it was one of the best mediums to reach the most amount of people. So where I felt like as if I went into like a teaching type of situation, that I'm sure throughout life I would touch however many people's lives in individual sort of capacity of teaching or coaching. But I felt like with music, and if it became popular enough, or if enough people heard it, that you could touch millions of people's lives. And so I don't know how many to this day that I've reached, but my hope is that it continues to reach more and more people, and that they'll, in some way, shape, or form, leave, quote unquote, like leave more inspired than they came. That's kind of how I like to look at it. And it did take a lot of looking sort of under the hood, for me, in terms of where I wanted to spend my time and energy, and what would make the most impact in the world. And that was what I came up with. And, even a dozen years later, 15 years later, or 20 years later, no, from that time when I was doing, so I guess it's about 15 years. It's evolving, it's changing. It's not oh, I'm not always 100% sure what the next move is, but I try and listen to my instincts and feel, what where I'm being called to spend my energy, and what might be of the most service to others. And try and move forward in a way that feels like I'm doing just that.
Yeah. Do you, as I hear you say all this, like you really try to focus on where you want to spend your focus and your energy. Would you say that that's how you used to think when you were 19, 20, and 21 before all this happened? Or was this really, this ability to really look inward and just be intuitive, really a result of the spiritual journey that you've been on?
I think it there was I think we all have that muscle, and it's a question of whether we want to work it out or not, And so I think from a younger age I was always a little bit of a deep thinker and questioner, like sort of like, why am I here on earth? What am I doing? Where some people, it's like they just go about their day and do what they got to do. Is Whereas for me, I was always sort of asking these deep questions, and just felt like that there was a larger purpose to my life. And I think that, that's where a lot of my spiritual study came in, and that these things started to resonate once I realized I wasn't the only one that was sort of, thinking these thoughts or asking these questions. And once I became more in touch with that, it sort of led me further and further down that path, and sort of, helped my understanding, and um, allowed me to, um, I don't know, grasp or comprehend more and more, sort of the deeper, or, further down the rabbit hole I went. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. What is your spiritual practice like these days? Like, what do you do for yourself to make sure that you stay connected?
Well, I think that's been, for me right now, that's one of the larger challenges where, I was recently married and I have a newborn, and so it's like, you know, now my time is no longer my own, so to speak, and it's being, put towards varying areas, and I love those things, but also, it can also sort of take you away too from some of the things that do help you stay centered. So that has become one of the challenges for me right now, just finding enough time to do everything. And I'm sure most new parents can relate to that concept. But in general, in a big picture sense, just trying to stay connected, and incorporate into my daily and weekly schedule those things that keep me connected. For me, some examples, like I do daily prayers that keep me connected, and weekly I might take a class, and still try to go to the gym to do some cardio once a week, and have some daily things, weekly things, monthly things that sort of overall keep me focused and on a path. And but try to be forgiving of myself if I don't reach all of my goals. But people in spirituality also sort of recognize too that if you're not moving forward, you're moving back, or you're going back. So it's a juggling act, it's a balancing act for me. And trying to stay on an upward trajectory, um, without falling, and just, sometimes we have those like little dips, but to like constantly be on a trajectory upwards.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe this will be your next big challenge with a big blessing, right?
You never
This is
know.
just your next challenge that you get to learn how to like be, available for all the things that you're committed to, but also keep that commitment to yourself in the forefront as well.
Yeah,
Knowing that taking care of ourselves makes us more available and healthier and well for everybody and everything else.
for sure. But a time is an interesting thing. Like, for instance, this last week I didn't get to pick up my. I do like a weekly live stream concert every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook. And throughout the week, I didn't pick up my guitar once, until Sunday, and just 20 minutes before, to try and figure out what songs I was going to play, and then did the show. And so, it's like some weeks, some areas that I want to focus on don't get the energy that I'd like.
Yeah. You know what I tell myself all the time? I love how you said you make sure that you forgive yourself if you don't reach every goal. It's because I tell myself all the time there's like a million things I would want to do if I had infinite time and
Right.
every day,
Right.
right? And
Yep.
energy and not needing to sleep. But the truth is that I just remind myself that things come in seasons and waves and that's okay, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're just in one season right now. I would love to know how this whole experience, everything from the chronic pain and, just the depth of low that you felt going through this, and then this introduction to spirituality and your growth over time in this new mindset, how has all of this really influenced your music?
Oh, I mean, it's very much present in a lot of the songs. I think I've written close to 300 songs to date, and the majority of my music, it always has, almost, even some of the darker songs have like a spiritual, silver lining to them, I would say. But it's definitely, it's in everything that I do. It sort of embodies me. And, when I'm putting energy towards something, I'm conscious of that. Um, and sort of, I think if if you're keeping those things in mind, and you're conscious, again, is the word I would use, of how you're spending your time and energy, it comes through in what you're doing. And I would like to think that, someone goes and listens to some of my songs, they would hear that. And, there's different types of songs that I do. Not every song is like a inspirational anthem, so to speak. There's love songs, there's songs, about relationships. There's all different songs that meet different um, emotions and life experiences. But again, sort of this common thread underneath it. There's always usually sort of a silver lining to the music. And if people go and listen to the songs, they'll hear that.
Hmm. So you kind of just have this goal that in the message of your music, there's always a silver lining at the end of the day.
Yeah, I want people to leave, as I said, more inspired than when they came, and whether that's a concert or whether, they're putting on their headphones to listen to an album or something. Like, my goal is that once they're done listening, they leave more inspired than when they came. And if I've done that, then I feel like I'm doing my job.
Hmm. Yeah, like music is medicine. It can be.
For sure. Music save lives. I mean, music saves lives. I fully believe that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know, yeah, there's like music that literally is so magical to me that it literally is like medicine.
It is. People
Yeah.
people need inspiration in their lives, and for some people, I think music is medicine, and I
Mhm.
think that's why, I chose that medium all those years ago and felt that I could impact the most people through music. And so, you know, uh, it's am I impacting as many people as I want on a daily basis? Maybe not. Am I impacting more people than I thought I could? Probably. I don't know. It's these are some bigger picture questions, I guess. But I truly believe that, at least that I'm on my path. And um, that it all happened for a reason, to get me sort of to this place. And to hopefully, make as positive an impact on the world as I can. I do the best I can. I'm not perfect by any means. And I think that every person's experience is different. I can just share my own.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how do you find yourself often inspired to write music? Like, is it something happens in your life and then you have a lot of feels and then you put them to the paper, or like you see something happen or a friend shares something with you? Like, where do you really find your most inspiration?
Yep. A lot from life experience. I used to do a lot of, did pretty much like all my writing by myself for a long time. In the last, I don't know, half a dozen years or so, I've been doing a lot more co-writing and writing with other people. And I found a lot of inspiration through the collaboration process. And sort of like I mentioned earlier, it's like I started working that muscle more. And the more that I've done that, I sort of have found some things that work well for me, where, if I get inspired, um, that's great. You get that added inspiration, like, for myself, listening to music or watching movies or seeing art or something like that. Or just, sometimes ideas just pop into my head where, you'd be lying there on the couch or sitting there and like, oh, I better write that down before I forget, type of thing. And, again, just sort of trying to, that's a lot of what brings me joy, is to, create music or create, messages that hopefully people can relate to, that inspires them.
Yeah, yeah. That's so awesome. Do you think that your 15-year-old self would have thought you would be where you are today?
Whew. You know, yes and no. Maybe I think um, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. The title of your band is called My Silent Bravery. What does that mean for you?
Great question. I get asked that a lot, and it's been a while since I answered that question. So I guess I can, and I think I'm learning more and more that every day, life's evolving and it's changing. What it means to me today is, um, it's sort of that it's the inner strength that we all have inside of us. I sort of, when I used to go, by my name, and I switched over to a band name because I wanted it to be more about the music and more about the message in the music than about me personally. Um, and so to me, it sort of embodies a lot of that idea where, again, it's like, I don't know, there's so much noise out there today nowadays. I feel like we're all being bombarded with so many things, whether through social media, all different kinds of media. I guess My Silent Bravery is sort of like this idea where we all have this sort of inner peace, inner voice, that we can go to for strength, for clarity, um, for to feel grounded. And so for me today, that's what it means.
I love it. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you a question that I ask every single person that comes onto the podcast. If you were told that you could only share one message with the world for the rest of your life, what would that one message be?
Whew, that's a good question. I would say one of the messages that I shared earlier, that from your biggest challenges can also come your biggest blessings.
Mhm. I love that. That is so true in my own experience. How can people connect with you? You said that you do a Facebook live on
Yep.
Sunday mornings.
Every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern,
Mhm.
facebook.com/My Silent Bravery. I do an hour free live stream concert where I share the songs acoustically and connect with fans and share stories behind the songs and play the songs. And um, it's a lot of fun for me and for people that join. And again, it's free every Sunday at 11 on Facebook, a.m. Eastern.
How else can people connect with you?
Through pretty much wherever you digest your music or go on your socials, everything's at My Silent Bravery. And however, wherever you go, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, just search My Silent Bravery, and if I'm on that platform, it should pop up.
You'll be there. Anywhere we look, you'll be there.
Hopefully, if it's a decent platform, and people can get music there, feel inspired, hopefully.
Yeah. Now, I know you are recently married and you do have a new baby. So, are you going to be doing any concerts or live events, live actual real events anytime in the next, 6 months or so?
I'd say anything's possible. Right now, I've been more focused on, doing the live streams because um, it's easier from from my home studio at present with a newborn. Um, so I won't say never, but I think there'll be a time when I go out on the road again. I mean, over the last 15 years, I mean, I've done 1,000 performances, traveled all over the world, got to play some amazing places, and I'd love to do that again when the timing's right. I feel like for my family right now, I'm focused on being there for my wife and my child, and But if the right tour opportunity comes along, I'm sure they might allow me to head out on the road for a short period of time, if you will. But so there's no, I got no dates on the books right now. But when I'm ready, I do hope to get back on the road for sure.
That's awesome. It'll probably happen in right timing, just like you said.
Absolutely.
Um, do you have any final messages that you would just want to impart into anybody listening? I will tell you I would assume most of my listeners are probably experiencing chronic pain, chronic illness of some sort, or going through something where they're just kind of looking for hope, inspiration, and getting out on the other side.
Yeah, I just say that, keep pushing forward, keep working hard on yourself, keep believing that change is possible because it is. Um, Try and tell yourself those positive thoughts, tap in to that quiet inner voice we were talking about earlier. And having belief is really important in wanting to change, because if you don't believe that you can change, then you won't, because you don't believe it. So it's really important to believe that you can change, and then continue to fight the good fight. I mean, uh, I I believe in you, and I believe in all of us. I believe in a higher power, and um, you're not alone. We're all going through challenges on a daily basis. They're just different ones, and hopefully at some point you'll tune in. You can check out my music, which hopefully will leave you more inspired than where it found you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being here and sharing your story and your message. And thanks for doing what you do and for having the courage to pursue your passion and your purpose, because the more people that are living in their truth, I just think it helps contribute to the overall well being of everybody on the planet. So, yeah, thanks for sharing your gift with people and giving them something to lean into. And I appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, but it was also, we got into some deep stuff. So, but it was a very positive experience, and I appreciate you having me, and hopefully, it's my belief too that if I affect one person, by listening to this, then the energy was not lost.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, that's a wrap. My hope every episode is that you are inspired in some way that healing is possible, that you might have new ideas or action steps that you can take to make the next shift in your life in a positive, healing direction. If you enjoyed today's episode and feel that there is a friend or family member who would also benefit from hearing Matthew's story, please share this episode with them, and or you can always share it on your social media platforms. Let's spread the message of possibility together. Let that musical medicine soak in this week, and until next time, make the week great.